What were some of the things that you had to work through in taking this journey? Like for me, it was fear. Like I had, excuse me, fear, the fear of security. Like one of the biggest demons in this world is health insurance and a stable paycheck because it will keep you where you're at. Because it's like, to your point, I'm really gonna leave this to not know where my next check is coming from, not know how long I'm gonna have a dry spell for and all of that, you know? It's the biggest demon. So I had to let that go. And it's funny because in preparing myself for this, I would say, okay, if I make this much in this, then I'll quit. And then I will make it. And then I'll say, if I make this much in it, I'll quit. And then I will make it. And I kept sort of finding a reason, not a reason to not do it, but a reason to push it back, waiting for this perfect moment. And I was feeling that what would happen next if I didn't move, because I was being told to move much earlier than I did, that he was gonna push me out in a way that would scare me almost in the way that it happens, because sometimes God gives us wake-up calls that sometimes we're like, oh my God, really? But yes, he allows those things for us to understand, like
Absolutely, to make
to obey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to do it.
So what were some of the things that you had to let go?
It's not necessarily like working through. I think
Sidebar, I am beating you right now.
I don't think you're beating me right now. I don't think you're beating me right now. But anyway.
I feel like I am.
But anyway, when it comes down to like the fears and stuff, I don't think I had much. I think the biggest concern is it's more the unknown, because you just you know inside that things are gonna work out, but you have to remember that you're not working at your time, you're working at God's time. And I think that's where the thing really happens. Like when it comes down to faith, I've always had faith and belief. And one time I remember praying because the things were like really tough at one point. And I was just telling God that the only reason I continue to do this is because of my faith in you. Because it's literally not because of anything else. It's literally because of my faith in him that this shit is gonna work out.
Right.
That's the only reason. Not about anybody else, because even today, like I put a video on Instagram, I'm in the business where I have to expect things from people, right? I have to expect work ethic. I have to expect passion. I need people to be on the same page and the same wavelength with me. And sometimes it's hard for people to meet me because I'm very intense, I'm very passionate at what I do. So I'm usually up here and a lot of people are down here. And in the business that I'm in, you kind of need to like have like this thing flowing in order for it to work. And this is what it comes down to, is those things where the unknown of like, I need this person to be on their A game in order for this thing to work, you know? So that's more what it is. It's more about like having the patience and understanding that it's going to happen at some point. But the scary part, I guess in a way, is not knowing when it's gonna happen. So you just have to be prepared for like the battle and the journey, because I know it's gonna happen.
And it's so funny that you say that, because literally just yesterday, I shared something about emotional intelligence and how important it is to understand, like, to process your feelings, understand what feelings certain things invoke, and how essentially at the root of all of that, it's the feeling that it puts us in, whether it's shame, fear, unworthiness, etc. So I believe that to excel as a business person, you need to develop your emotional intelligence so that you're able to not only understand that and read that for yourself, but then how that applies when you're in a setting with someone else and learning, okay, this person responded like this, and perhaps this is why, because I think that'll help with, for people like you and I that do everything with our heart and with so much passion, it's easy to become offended. It offends us when people aren't as passionate as we are, because we're like, why don't you get it?
Yeah, but you know what's funny is it goes to the point. I remember when I was seeing this interview, and it talked about Magic Johnson, right? And he left his job as vice president of operations with the Lakers, and people had him out like he's a quitter. He quit on them, whatever the heck it is. And then he was also a coach at one time. He coached like about 32 games, I think it was, in the NBA, and they called him a quitter there too. But when you dig deep down and you start hearing other people and they're talking about the situation, you notice that he's one of the greatest basketball players to ever play the sport.
Right.
So what happens with people of that mindset, they expect other people to get the same thing as them,
Right.
to have the same work ethic,
Right.
to have the same passion. So like, hey, you should shoot the ball this way, and him telling someone to do it this way, and understanding he couldn't comprehend that this person just physically cannot do the things that he can do. So that's why it was very hard for him to be a coach, because he just couldn't coach other players who did not have the same skill set that he did.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what happens a lot in with us in our work. It's like, and I know it happens with a lot of other entrepreneurs and a lot of workers in any workplace. It happens. It's just like, in order for it to work, you kind of need to understand people's strengths and their weaknesses,
Right.
and have to understand how to work together and work with them.
Right.
But it can get very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Know what it's like to love somebody the way I love you. To know what it's like to love somebody the way I love you. To know how it feels to kiss New York City.